All right, let's talk about the Industrial Revolution. And I want you to forget the dusty old textbook version for a minute. Think of this as the big bang of our modern world. Seriously, it was the moment that created pretty much everything you see around you. It's why your life is what it is, why you work in an office and not a field, why you live by the clock on your phone, not the sun in the sky.
And that right there, that is the fundamental shift. For basically all of human history, life ran on a different clock, the clock of the seasons. It was circular, predictable. The Industrial Revolution just shattered that. It gave us a new master, the ticking clock, relentless, linear, precise. And that one change, well, it affects literally everything, from our jobs to how we sleep.
Okay, so let's dive right in. We've got to start where it all began, with that absolutely radical shift from muscle to machine. This was the spark, right? The initial splash, just a tiny pebble dropped in the pond. But the ripples, well, they were going to change the entire world.
So what exactly are we talking about? It was this period where, for the very first time, we started outsourcing our hardest work not to an ox or a horse, but to a machine. And this wasn't just about a few new gadgets. No way. This was a complete rewrite of society's operating system. It changed how we made things, how we grew our food, how we got from point A to point B, everything.
And boy, did it happen fast. In the 1760s, you get machines like the spinning jenny that start automating textile work. Just 20 years later, bam, James Watt improves the steam engine, and suddenly, power isn't tied to a river anymore. You can build a factory anywhere. This tech was so revolutionary, Britain actually tried to ban anyone from exporting the designs. But get this, that didn't stop guys like Samuel Slater. He memorized the blueprints, sailed to America, and just rebuilt the whole thing from memory. They called him Slater the Traitor back in England for it. So, all this new technology, what's the first big domino to fall? Well, this explosion of invention didn't just create more stuff. It created a totally new kind of place for humans to live, the industrial city. Millions of people were pulled from the quiet countryside into the chaotic heart of these new urban centers. And the pull was, well, massive. Look at this number, 94%. That's how much the population of England and Wales grew in just 50 years. 50! Factory jobs were like a giant magnet. And cities like Manchester just exploded, creating this world of incredible, never-before-seen opportunity, and, of course, some pretty terrifying new challenges. And this quote, wow, it just gives you this gut punch, this first-hand look at the human cost of all that progress. This isn't a statistic, right? This is what someone saw. That phrase, a spiritless and dejected air, it just says everything about the brutal work and the grim conditions inside what the poet William Blake called those dark, satanic mills. And that human cost was paid in years. 17. Just let that sink in. That was the average life expectancy for a worker in Manchester. Think about it. You had people packed into tiny living spaces, drinking polluted water with zero sanitation. It was basically the perfect storm for diseases like cholera to just tear through the city. So you've got this massive shift, and it literally cracks society in two. It created this brand new fault line. On one side, you had the bourgeoisie, the factory owners, the inventors. These were the new haves, getting incredibly rich, not from owning land, but from owning machines and factories. And on the other side, the proletariat, the workers, the have-nots who owned nothing but their own labor. And that division, man, it would shape politics and economics for the next 200 years. Now, a fire this big doesn't just stay in one place, right? This revolution was way too powerful to be kept in Britain. The ideas, the technology, even the new social problems, it all started jumping across borders. And that, my friends, is our second big ripple. So who was first in line? Well, it was Britain's neighbors, places like Belgium and France, and of course, its old colony, the United States. And it was industrial spies and entrepreneurs. Remember our guy Samuel Slater, who were absolutely essential in getting this knowledge out and kickstarting industrialization across the Western world? And then you get this second wave. Countries like Germany and Japan jumped in the game a little later, but they did it with incredible speed. See, they had an advantage. They got to skip all the early trial and error stuff and jump straight to the latest, most efficient technology. And it worked. I mean, by 1900, the United States had already blown past Britain in industrial output. The game was changing fast. But, this global boom had a dark side, a really significant one. As factories were booming in Europe and America, traditional craft industries in other parts of the world were dying.
Take India, for example, which had been a world leader in making beautiful textiles for centuries. Suddenly, they were being flooded with cheap machine-made cloth from Manchester. This process, it's called deindustrialization, basically turned them from manufacturers into just suppliers of raw materials, like cotton, for the very factories that were putting their own people out of work. It's a tough cycle.
So, all this production, all this expansion, it was all being fueled by one thing: coal, burning absolutely unprecedented amounts of it to make steel and power factories. And this came with a hidden cost, a long-term consequence that nobody at the time could have possibly seen coming. And this is the third ripple, and maybe the one that affects us the most today. It really forces you to stop and ask a pretty tough question. We can count up all the money, we can list all the amazing new technologies, but what was the real price tag on all of this progress? And here's the connection, laid out plain and simple. Step 1, you burn all that coal. Step 2, all that burning starts pumping massive amounts of CO2 and other junk into our atmosphere, which leads to step 3. After about 1850, the planet's climate, a system that had been pretty stable for thousands of years, it started to change. This revolution wasn't just changing human society, it was physically changing the Earth. And if you fast forward to today, we are all living deep inside the consequences of that third ripple. We see it everywhere. The Arctic is warming up at a terrifying rate. We're losing so many animal species that entire ecosystems can't adapt anymore. And these monster glaciers, like the one they call the Doomsday Glacier, they're getting unstable. These are basically the delayed invoices, the bill finally coming due for a party that started over 200 years ago. Which brings us right up to the present day, because here's the wild thing. The revolution, it never actually ended. It's still going. It just evolved. And its core ideas have now morphed into what people are calling the Fourth Industrial Revolution, or Industry 4.0. This is the wave we are all living in right now. So, what is Industry 4.0? Well, think of it as this incredible mashup. It's where you take artificial intelligence, billions of internet-connected devices, super advanced robots, even gene editing, and you smash them all together. It's blurring the lines between the physical world, the digital world, and even the biological world. It's the next logical step from that very first leap away from muscle power. And this table here, it lays out the whole story perfectly. You can just see the evolution. First, you've got steam to make machines go. Then, boom, electricity to make lots of things at once. Then computers and the internet come along to automate it all. And now we're in the age of AI and smart systems that can learn, analyze, and even act on their own. And that leads us to the big final question for today. The original Industrial Revolution was all about replacing human and animal muscle. This new revolution, the one we're in now, it's starting to supplement and in some cases even replace the human mind. The ripples from that tiny pebble dropped in an English mill all those years ago are still expanding. In fact, they're more like a tidal wave now, creating the future we're all walking into. So the only question left to ask is, are we ready for it?